just want to tell you how thankful I am. This is going to be a wonderful event. Thank you.
We'll be starting the programming very, very shortly. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Jackie. Thank you so much for making it. Really cold day outside. I know many of us have gone through a lot of trouble getting here today, so I'm so appreciative of each and every one of you for being here. This is a one-of-its-kind event, the first time in New York, where we have a blend of literary, cultural aspects of Dalit life being presented to an audience in the city. So you're witnessing history in the making, and we're just very excited to be a part of it. Well, we're very thrilled to have you here. I'm grateful that you decided to brave this extremely cold weather to come and seek the warmth of community with us. Today would have been the 37th birthday of Rohith Vemula, a Dalit scholar and leader who was institutionally murdered in Hyderabad University in 2016. He did not come to the campus thinking he was going to die. Rohith Vemula got there to get an education, which is prohibitively challenging for Dalit students like him to access. At the university, he did what every student is expected to do: unpack his scholarship to the prism of his lived experience. Rohith read the work of philosophers, theorists, and world builders, and questioned the exclusion he was facing right there on campus. He perhaps wondered if his university, which is more than pleased to send its scholars abroad to espouse these very same theories, would allow him to apply them right at home. They didn't. Instead, they punished and ostracized him to the extent that Rohith ended up writing a letter to the university admin asking them for a nice robe. The robe was for Dalit students before they even consider applying their classroom theories to their own lives. Despite this heartbreaking plea, which should have spurred any institution into prompt action, they further penalized Rohith by throwing him out of his hostel and discontinuing his fellowship. Money he desperately needed, not only to survive, but also support his family, which included his mother Yashica Dutt. She had worked her whole life doing construction work and cleaning homes to be able to send him to a good school. Now, seeing no end and probably revulsed by the state he had been forced in, Rohith saw no option but to use the nice robe that he had rebuked the university admin for pushing him into. Rohith might have stepped into that noose with some free will, but make no mistake that his death was an institutional murder. One that carried such immense consequences that it ignited a wave of protests on campuses across India, but even in the US, right here, UK and Australia. Millions of Dalit and caste-oppressed people were galvanized into confronting their own caste identity and resisting the systemic exclusion and barriers they had experienced all their lives. His words, which he left behind in a heartbreakingly powerful last letter, and where he talked about the hopelessness of never being treated as a mind made of stardust, echoed with a generation of people around the world. I read his letter sitting at a coffee shop not too far from here in Chelsea, when I was still dealing with moving into a new country and hiding the fact that I was born in a Dalit sweeper caste family, Bhangi. The name of my caste, which carries so much shame that even today, my mother can't make herself say the words. It was not only my caste identity, but a social definition which identified and defined me as a woman who was never to be considered worthy or taken seriously. Reading Rohith's letter gave me the courage to confront my own caste and reveal it to the entire world in a Facebook note I had titled, "Today I'm coming out as Dalit." Many of you probably know, Coming Out as Dalit was released as a book in India in 2019, and the US and globally in 2024. And it became a handbook for so many other Dalit people like me, hiding their caste. It was the first English language book by a Dalit author to win India's prestigious Sahitya Academy Yuva Puraskar. And that was far from the only impact of Rohith's life and legacy on our culture. Dalit literature exploded, Dalit music boomed, and Dalit art erupted as a wellspring of inspiration and resistance. If you can take a look. Looking back at the moment of Rohith's passing 10 years later, we can see the distance we have covered since then. The conversation on caste in the US has taken a new turn in the last decade. And we saw universities like Columbia, Brandeis, Brown, and California State add caste to their protection policies. Seattle became the first city in the country to outlaw caste discrimination. And California introduced a historic bill to make caste discrimination illegal across the entire state. Even the state of New York has a bill to prevent caste discrimination in consideration right now. And just a few weeks ago, on the 10th anniversary of Rohith's passing, the leader of India's opposition, Rahul Gandhi, announced that Rohith Act, which is a central law to create accountability against caste discrimination for students in Indian colleges and universities, would be implemented in 2 states in the country. But the more things change, the more the establishment claws back to make them stay the same. Since Rohith's passing, dozens of Dalit, caste-oppressed, and Adivasi students have similarly died on Indian campuses, with no accountability for their deaths. 98 of those students died on Indian campuses between 2019 and 2021. As a result of petitions filed by Rohith's mother, Yashica Vemula, and Payal Tardi's mother, Abeda Tardi, who both lost their children to institutional murder on campus, India's central body overseeing campus policies recently issued guidelines, stating for the first time to create institutional accountability for the caste discrimination on campus. And how did dominant caste Indians, who have repeatedly gaslit the rest of us into believing that caste doesn't exist, that it's all in our minds, that if only we didn't think of ourselves as victims, we'd be past caste, who stopped Rohith's mother from entering the campus to visit the spot where he was last seen for several years, who paralyzed Rohith's friends and supporters with expensive court cases that some of them are still fighting, and who in fact denied that Rohith was even Dalit, just to evade the accountability for his loss. How did this Indian dominant caste population react to a historic set of guidelines that merely ask for the protections of Dalit and caste-oppressed students? Same students who were barred from even touching books, and then when they were allowed to touch them, they were tortured on campuses. They reacted by raising hell, a population that has become so inured to prohibitive inflation, inaccessibility, deathly pollution, and income inequality to meekly accept it as part of daily life. They came out on the streets to protest against the protection for Dalits. Similar to how dominant caste Indians had protested caste protection law in California, or they will inevitably do it here in New York when it goes public. This is why we have gathered here today, to mark the legacy of a Dalit icon whose life and words changed the course of Dalit history. And to make sure that at a time of unprecedented visibility for South Asians, with one of our own in City Hall, Dalits get the recognition and acknowledgement we deserve. With an event of this scale, which has never been organized in New York City, which brings together Dalit art, literature, and culture to New Yorkers, we aim to ensure that our lives and histories are considered as much a part of South Asian culture as everyone else. That Dalit artists get the place in the canon they deserve. Dalit writers get the same spotlight that is so generously bestowed on other dominant caste Indian authors. And Dalit music gets the same attention as Bollywood. We also hope to extend solidarity to Dalits, not only from India, but also countries like Nepal, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, as well as folks with Indo-Caribbean backgrounds, whose histories of indentured labor and lower caste roots create more commonality with us than many others. And we implore you to pay attention to caste. Learn about it. Call it out. Especially if you're South Asian, as many of you are. Know your history and stand up for what's right. Because as we remember the legacy of Rohith Vemula and look back at the impact of his life, nothing would mean more if he still had him here between us. May you always live in stardust, Rohith Vemula. Jai Bhim.
From Delhi to Andhra Pradesh. After the death of a Dalit student, a story of persecution he and his four colleagues faced at the hands of university authorities.
A massive protests have broken out at IIT Madras as well. The police detained students who were raising slogans against the government.
సెంట్రల్ యూనివర్సిటీలో భారీగా పోలీసులు మోహరించారు. అధికారులు పరిస్థితిని ఎప్పటికప్పుడు సమీక్షిస్తున్నారు.
Protests have been snowballing all across the country.
Political parties, it is an issue that they are going to take forward. And the students here say the protests are going to continue.
Justice! 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 रोहित तेरा मिशन पूरा हम सब मिलकर करेंगे पूरा यार तेरा मिशन पूरा वीर सलाम जय अम्बेडकर का श्री राम जय अम्बेडकर का श्री राम हो बर्बाद हो बर्बाद हो बर्बाद हो बर्बाद यार तेरा मिशन पूरा हम सब मिलकर करेंगे पूरा रोहित तेरे खून से इंकलाब आएगा कितने रोहित मारोगे हर घर से रोहित निकलेगा अरे मैं चांदी डाउन 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 मोदी सरकार डाउन 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 मोदी सरकार डाउन डाउन डाउन
Good morning. I would not be around when you read this letter. Don't get angry on me. I know some of you truly cared for me, loved me, and treated me very well. I have no complaints on anyone. It was always with myself I had problems. I feel a growing gap between my soul and my body, and I have become a monster. I always wanted to be a writer of science like Carl Sagan. At last, this is the only letter I am getting to write. I loved science, stars, nature, but then I loved people without knowing that people have long since diverged from nature. It has become truly difficult to love without getting hurt.
நாங்கள் வந்து தமிழ்நாட்டில் காஞ்சிபுரம்ன்ற பகுதியில் மக்கள் மன்றம்ன்ற அமைப்பில் இருக்கிறோம். ரோஹித் வெமுலா அவருடைய இறப்பு வந்து ஒரு தற்கொலை இல்லை, இது வந்து ஒரு நிறுவனமாக்கப்பட்ட ஒரு படுகொலை தான், ஒரு கொலை இது. அதனால இதை வந்து கண்டிப்பாக எல்லாருக்கும் கொண்டு போகணும், இது மக்கள் மத்தியில் கொண்டு போகணும். இது ஏதோ ஒரு பல்கலைக்கழகத்தில் மட்டுமே நடந்த விஷயம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு இது ஒரு முடங்கி போய் இல்லாமல் இது மக்கள்கிட்ட கொண்டு போகணும்.
இந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு பிள்ளைய வந்து இழந்தது ரொம்பவே மனசு ரொம்ப வருத்தமாக இருக்குது. எனக்கு இதில் என்ன சொல்லணும்னா, குறிப்பாக தாழ்த்தப்பட்ட ஒடுக்கப்பட்ட மக்களுக்கு வந்து எதுவுமே வந்து இயல்பாக ஈஸியாக கிடைக்க மாட்டேங்குது. எல்லா விஷயத்துக்குமே போராட வேண்டியதாக இருக்குது. ஆனால் ஒரே ஒரு விஷயத்துக்கு மட்டும் போராடாத அவங்க வெற்றி அடைகிறாங்க. எதிரன்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா இந்த மரணம் தான். சாவு மட்டும்தான் அவங்களுக்கு வந்து எந்த தங்கு தடையும் இல்லாமல் இலவசமாக கிடைக்குதுன்னு நம்ம சொல்லலாம். ரொம்ப அது மகிழ்ச்சியாகவும் அவங்க வந்து அதை ஏற்றுக்கணும் போகிற அளவுக்கு சூழல் வந்து இன்றைக்கி வந்து உருவாகிருக்கிறது. அந்த சூழல் இனியும் வரக்கூடாதுன்றது தான் என்னுடைய ஆதங்கம். இனிமேல் தாழ்த்தப்பட்ட சமூகத்தில் சேர்ந்தவங்களா இருக்கட்டும், எந்த மாணவர்களுமே வந்து இறப்பை நோக்கி நம்ம போகக்கூடாது.
ఫేస్బుక్లో ఏది రాసినా క్రిటికల్గా దాన్ని ఎట్లా కౌంటర్ చేయాలి, విత్ బుక్స్, విత్ ఆథర్స్, ఒక సైటేషన్ లెవెల్లో దాన్ని కౌంటర్ చేశాడు. ఎవడి ఇంట్రెస్టింగ్ వ్యక్తి అని అనుకునేటోడు. ఇప్పుడు రోహిత్ లెఫ్ట్లో ఉన్నాడు, ఎస్ఎఫ్ఐలో పనిచేశాడు. ఎప్పుడు చూసినా లెఫ్ట్ అనుకుంటూ తిరిగిన వ్యక్తి క్యాంపస్లో. నాకు రోహిత్ అంటే యూనివర్సిటీ ఒక ఇన్సిడెంట్లో కలిశాడు. మేము కోపంతో ఉన్నాము. మేము పోయినప్పుడు ఆ వ్యక్తి అంటే మా వాళ్ళ మీద దాడి జరిగింది, అంటే ఏసే వాళ్ళ మీద దాడి జరిగితే దానికి రెస్పాన్సిబుల్ అయిన ఆర్గనైజర్ మీదకి మేమందరం పోయి ఇది ఎట్లా జరిగింది ఏందని అన్నప్పుడు మీరు దళితులను ఎందుకు టార్గెట్ చేస్తున్నారు అంటే ఆల్ ఆఫ్ సడన్ రోహిత్ అడ్డం వచ్చేసాడు. నేను దళితున్నే, ఎస్ఎఫ్ఐని చెప్పండి అన్నట్టు వచ్చాడు. అంటే రోహిత్కి లెఫ్ట్లో ఇమ్మడలేకపోవడం అంటే మనోడుకున్న ఐడియాస్, మనోడుకున్న స్ట్రగుల్ స్పిరిట్ ఎస్ఎఫ్ఐ ఎంకరేజ్ చేయలే ఎప్పుడు. ఆ ఎస్ఎఫ్ఐ ఫుల్ ఆఫ్ రెస్ట్రిక్షన్స్ అన్నట్టు, ఏది పార్టీ ఏది చెప్తే అది వినాలి, పార్టీ ఏది చెప్తే అది, అంటే ఇండివిజువల్ ఒపీనియన్స్ ఎప్పుడు ఉండవు. సో ఏఎస్ఎల్కి వచ్చిన తర్వాత రోహిత్ చదవడం అన్నది మొదలుపెట్టాడు. అంబేద్కర్ మూమెంట్, అంబేద్కర్ సంబంధించిన లిటరేచరు.
Let us leave aside slogan. Let us leave aside words which frighten people.
The story of caste goes back thousands of years, but we can begin telling it from the day Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar signed on the Constitution of India. In 1949, as chairman of the drafting committee, Dr. Ambedkar presented the Constitution to Parliament. Speaking about the challenges that lay ahead, he said, "I am of the opinion that in calling ourselves a nation, we are cherishing a great delusion. How can people divided into several thousands of castes be a nation? The castes are anti-national because they bring about separation in social life. They are anti-national also because they generate jealousy and antipathy between caste and caste. We must overcome all these difficulties if we wish to become a nation in reality." A jurist, economist, and philosopher, Dr. Ambedkar belonged to an untouchable caste. He spent his life campaigning against the unequal caste system and for a society based on equality, freedom, and fraternity. Guided by him, the Indian Constitution declared the practice of untouchability a crime and provided for affirmative action known as reservation. This would ensure that Dalits and other communities who had been historically excluded got access to education and jobs.
One thing that what we request, how long this protest is, do you want to continue?
In a way you are saying, hold on here. In a way you are saying, I have a solution and I'm holding it back. You are accusing me. You are saying that I must not escape. Can I not escape? It doesn't happen like that. It doesn't happen.
Let them discuss with Vice Chancellor. Let them discuss.
Let them tell. We want to hear each and every
We are going to close it. You go and talk to Vice Chancellor.
Nobody innocently wants to study here as if we don't understand what is going on.
खुद तो दूसरे डिपार्टमेंट से आके आर्ट एंड पॉलिटिक्स रिसर्च गोइंग
We will all die. You walk on our blood.
You are our student friends. You are our student brothers. You are saying us. We are warning you. See what is this?
Your brother died, man. Did you know that your brother died?
My brother. He's not my brother.
Oh yeah.
That's why it does not matter to you.
సెమిస్టర్ ని 5 నెలలు ఉన్న సెమిస్టర్ ని 3 నెలలు చేసినప్పుడు ఎవరికి సమస్య రాలేదే? అప్పుడు ప్రశాంతంగా ఉన్నారే. 10 రోజులు ఆగానే మనకు అందరికీ ఇవన్నీ గుర్తుకొచ్చేస్తున్నాయి.
సెమిస్టర్ కి హాలిడేస్ కి మాకు సంబంధం ఉందన్న రీసెర్చ్ అంటే. సో అది ప్రాబ్లమే కాదు మాకు.
ఈ ఫ్రాటర్నిటీ లేదనే అన్న, ఈ రోజు ఈ బ్రదర్హుడ్ లేదనే రోహిత్ ని నిజంగా సిస్టమే చంపేసింది. ఈ రోజు ఈ బ్రదర్హుడ్ లేదనే అన్న. మనిషిని మనిషిగా చూడట్లేదు, మనిషిని ఒక ఐడెంటిటీగా చూస్తున్నారని చెప్పేసి రోహిత్ ఏదైతే మాట రాశాడో ఆ మాట అందరి లోపల మైండ్లలో తిరిగిపోతుంది. మైండ్లలో తిరిగిపోయినట్టు మనిషిని మనిషిగా చూడట్లేదు అన్నది ఒక్కసారి మైండ్లలో ఫిక్స్ అయిపోయిందో జనాలకి, ఈ మళ్ళీ 10 మంది రోహితులు వస్తారు. దయచేసి మన సమాజంగా అట్లాంటి రోహితులను మనం పుట్టించొద్దన్న, మనం దాంట్లో ప్రాసెస్ కావద్దన్న. దయచేసి మీకు దండం పెడతాను.
My name is Rohith Vemula. I came from Guntur. My friendship, I'm a Dalit coming from Guntur district, and I have been a student of University of Hyderabad from 2010, and now I'm doing PhD in social studies department school. And then recently the university has taken a decision to suspend 5 Dalit students, and they have expelled us from the hostel premises, and they have said that the notice which we got served says that our presence in public places and our presence in hostel premises and administration building can be treated as criminal acts.
I never bothered to come here, never, spoke to him, understood their pain, what really happened, what they are going through. I thought it's just a normal thing, like people protest here, people talk here, everything is celebrated here. Sadness, happiness, everything is done here. I never thought that these 5 people were staying here. And then one of my friends told they've been thrown out of the hostel and they're sleeping here. I think 17th January, as usual, I came here to drink chai and I noticed nobody was here. And then we asked some girls who were sitting on the steps, ki kya hua? And somebody told somebody committed suicide. And then we ran there and to that particular place, and then it was so that you can imagine that weird chilliness in the air, like nobody wants to talk, nobody wants to sing. And I never thought it will happen. I never thought this will happen. I never thought a small fight between 2 people, two parties actually, would come till here and one person has to just die because of that.
The events leading up to Rohith's death started in August 2015 in Delhi, where ABVP, a Hindu supremacist student union, disrupted the screening of a documentary film. Muzaffarnagar Eventually is a film that exposes how politicians belonging to the Bharatiya Janata Party had engineered Hindu-Muslim riots to win a state election in North India. The Ambedkar Students Association joined a nationwide protest against the forcible stopping of the film by screening it at Hyderabad University. This in turn led to bitter arguments with the ABVP on campus. Sushil Kumar, president of the ABVP, then filed a complaint against Rohith and his friends, accusing them of something quite different.
So what has happened is, on August 2nd, I have seen these people doing namaz for Yaqub Miman against the Yaqub Miman's hanging.
the violent disruption of a film screening is difficult to defend. It's far easier to win the fight by labeling your opponents anti-national. 1 week before the ASA's documentary screening, a group of Muslim students on the campus had held a funeral prayer to protest the hanging of Yaqub Memon, a man convicted of plotting a terrorist attack. The ASA, being against capital punishment, lent its support to this event. Suddenly, the film screening was forgotten. Rohith and his comrades were accused of supporting Muslim terrorists.
వందే మాత్రం. నా పేరు మహేష్ నాయక్ ఫ్రమ్ ఏబీపీ హెచ్సియు. నిన్న మా క్యాంపస్లో యాకూబ్ మెనన్, నేడు జేఎన్యూలో అఫ్జల్ గురు, మరి రేపు వేరే క్యాంపస్లో ఇంకో అఫ్జల్ పుట్టుకురాడని లెఫ్టిస్ట్ దే హ్యావ్ ఆర్గనైజ్ ప్రొటెస్ట్ ఇన్ దేర్ క్యాంపస్. బట్ మేమేం అనుకుంటున్నామంటే ప్రతి ఒక్క ఇంటి నుంచి మీరు యాకూబ్ మెనన్ని ఒక అఫ్జల్ గురిని ఎలా తేవాలనుకుంటున్నారో మేము అదే ఇంటి నుంచి ఒక హనుమాన్ తప్పని ఒక వీర్జం అనేది తీసుకొస్తాం. మీరు కనుక కాశ్మీర్ మా ల్యాండ్, అది మా లాక్కొని మీరు వేరే కంట్రీని చూస్తుంటే మేము చేతులు కట్టుకొని చూసుకోవాలా? మాకు like our blood is so vicious that you can't ignite it with unreasonable protest. Our blood is so pure that it gets ignited when you try to destroy our nations.
See, Ambedkar Students Association holds the principles of Ambedkar. The essence of what Ambedkar says is that caste structure, this disease of caste structure is inherent to the quote-unquote religion of Hinduism. And they have always stood tooth and nail and asked for annihilation of caste. And now people who stand for Hindutva politics, who want a Hindu Rashtra, will not take it. Second thing, Ambedkar Students Association has a composition of Dalits and Muslims coming together. And now that's a big attack. That's a big threat for the ruling classes and castes if there is unity of the oppressed.
In any village, if you raise your voice against the upper caste people, immediately they will try to suppress you. They will go to the up to extent, to kill the people. That is how we raised our voice, we achieved our rights, and we fight for our rights, which they don't like. When BJP has come into the power, since that day, they have started threatening ASA. And we won in the elections. We ruled this university. We were the leaders of this student community. Nowhere in this country a Dalit organization got power independently. They don't want us to be the leaders of student community. That is how they started making this issue and want to suppress the ASA in the campus, which we don't want to be happen in the future, because this is, if ASA is not there for the coming generation, it would be very hard to survive in this university, because they want to make all universities in this India this Brahmin Agraharas. They want to make it.
This is definitely the first time that all student organizations, irrespective of their ideologies and political differences, came together because we felt the need to send a very strong message to the Saffron Brigade that they can't just, play with our lives like this. So it could happen to any student. It can happen to any student even from now. Like one ABVP person files a false case, and they use a political pressure of BJP from outside, and your life could be destroyed. And I mean, Rohith Vemula is no more with us.
To Vemula Sunkana, who is one of the suspended students. Yes.
I was in my hostel, August 3rd, 2015. And I got call from Rohith, I got call from Prashant. It was around 11 o'clock. They said that this ABVP president wrote a abusive comment on Facebook by saying that ASA goons are talking about hooliganism. So we have to ask him why he has written such vulgar comments. Then first, they have called to DSW, Dean Student Welfare, and said that we wanted to speak to Sushil Kumar in your presence. He said that I am outside, so I will send the security. Then when we went to that hostel, security was there, security has come. And in front of the security only, we went to that Sushil's room and we asked him to come down. He made a call and he invited the police also. In front of all these official members, we asked him why you wrote such a comment. And in front of the police only, he has written an apology letter and submitted to the security officer, not even to us. Then we all dispersed from there. But I got a call in the morning by saying that Anna, 3 of our students were arrested by the police. Then I asked why. Night, Sushil Kumar went to the police station and filed a case against to our organization members.
There is a big question mark right here. The doctor is saying he doesn't really believe there are 40 people assaulted you. It's a question mark right here. The report is in my hand right now. Nobody is saying you faked a surgery. But if the doctors are not convinced that you were assaulted by 40 people, why should we be convinced? Can you please explain?
Okay, first thing that you have raised is saying that there are anti-national elements. Okay, I have given a complaint to the Bandar Dattatreya or I have given a complaint to the University of Hyderabad saying that there are anti-national activities that are happening in the university.
If we are doing a program against capital punishment, how can we become anti-national? Okay, no, I understand your sentiment. The question that was asked was, how is it that you are relating appendicitis to beating? That question you are not even able to answer. Sushil?
I'm answering right. Why are you so tense? Let me go from a point to point. Okay, let me tell you one thing. Here, I never termed Rohith Vemula as an anti-national. Okay, I told you people pulling into an anti-national activity.
You just before you told.
It is you.
No, Sushil, you're going back on your to an interview to NewsX. You called him an anti-national 4 hours ago. You're going back on your statement.
This incident happened where we were accused of beating Sushil Kumar from ABVP. At that time, the proctoral board called us for depositions. We went and gave our depositions, and 1 week later, we got orders. These orders were sent to every department, including my HOD. The order stated that this is last warning for you as well as for ABVP. I thought it was the end of the case. After that, I went home to help my sister on some work. While I was at home, I got a call from my department that I was suspended for 1 semester. I immediately returned to Hyderabad and all of us asked the VC as to why a second set of orders were issued when the first order of warning was already given. Then the university then promised to set up a new committee and the suspension was revoked. By the end of November, we came to know that the university was getting letters from Bandar Dattatreya and the HRD ministry. By 16th December, we got the third set of suspension orders. The third order said that we could complete our courses but without hostel facilities and participation in social and political activities. All 5 of us came from agricultural labor families. All of us needed to send half of our fellowship amounts to our home. If we rent rooms, it would cost us at least to 5,000 rupees and we could not afford that. Giving us admission and not hostel accommodation is one kind of discrimination.
We felt it is a social boycott. How? I will tell. In the villages, the upper caste people used to ask us to come and work there, and we'll go and work there, and we get our money. They don't allow us to enter in their streets. They don't allow into the temples. They don't allow into their homes. Like that, in this very much university, they don't allow our students into the common places. They don't allow into the administration block. They don't allow into the hostels. Isn't this social boycott?
Velivada was written by Rohith. Velivadas doesn't exist just in the villages. It also exists in the universities. Now, for one who wants to assert self-respect, if he is chained, if he or she is chained and kept in a dark room, wouldn't it suffocate? It was like that. It was suffocating for us. The attack on Rohith Vemula, the attack on 4 of us, was not an attack on 5 Dalit research scholars alone. It was an attack on the aspirations of the community itself, where the community, which does not own property, which does not own assets, which doesn't have access to capital, which can only produce human capital through accessing education, they want to cut off this human capital to ensure that we remain their bonded laborers, we remain their servile laborers.
Caste-based discrimination is not visible here. It doesn't mean that it is not there. In case of universities, it is not visible, but it is working in different forms. So like not giving much importance in the classroom, a kind of negative impression on people that okay, since they have reservation, they have come here, otherwise they would not have come here. Since they have fellowship, they are studying here, otherwise they would not have come here.
For example, when I entered into the class, directly I came from the Vijayanagar, where I was working there in the water tank. I directly came from that work, and I wear 20 rupees chappal, and I don't know all the brands now people are wearing. I know only 50 rupees shirt and 100 rupees or 150 rupees pants. I wear, and I entered into the class. All people, most of the people looked at me like anything. And there itself I felt very bad, and I could not even speak about 3 months in the class. What stopped me to be very vibrant in the class? Because I was a second topper, and I was very vibrant student at the time. I know what faculty was teaching me, but I could not answer them. What made me like that? We don't want to lose our people. See, from my village, I'm the only person who reached this PhD. If I die, what about the 400 families who are in our home native place? What about, see, they thought that I am something else to them. If I die here, what is there? And they will not send their children to these universities. I know that.
That was really a big shock to me, and it took some time for me to digest the fact that he was no more.
The allegation against you is that you took the decision to basically suspend Rohith and his friends under pressure from 2 different union ministers, Minister Dattatreya and then the letters from the HRD ministry.
Let me tell you very clearly, there was
no pressure whatsoever. The Dean Student Welfare was consulted before we took the decision. Not only Dean Student Welfare, several other senior faculty members. I am one who never believed in taking a decision as an individual.
But my question is, you've given a technical account of what led you to take the decision, but at a human level, do you have any regrets? Do you believe that you could have handled it differently and maybe saved a life?
Of course, please, I told you, as a university, we have to go by the statutes and ordinances. And if I have not followed that, you would have asked me another question.
మేము చేసిందంతా ఏంది ప్రొటెక్ట్ చేసాం అంతే. మమ్మల్ని యాంటీ నేషనల్, కాస్టిస్టులు, ఎక్స్ట్రీమిస్టులు అని అన్నది వాళ్ళ ఎంపీఏ. మా మీద లెటర్లు పంపించింది వాళ్ళ ఎంపీలే. ఈయన యూనివర్సిటీ మీద దాడి చేసింది వాళ్ళ పార్టీ కార్యకర్తలే. వెంటనే ఎమ్మెల్సీ రామచంద్రరావు వస్తాడు, ఈ ఏరియా మాది, నువ్వు నీ కథ చూస్తాము, ఏమనుకుంటున్నావు, మా గవర్నమెంట్ ఉంది అని బెదిరించిపోతే ఈయన బెదిరి వీళ్ళకి ఇష్టం వచ్చిన యాక్షన్లు మా మీద తీసుకొని మమ్మల్ని లాస్ట్కి సూసైడ్ లెవెల్లో, లేదంటే దాన్ని ఏమంటారు, ఏమి చేతగాని స్థితిలో మమ్మల్ని నెట్టేశారు.
Before 3 days of Rohith's death, all the 5 students who were expelled, their supervisors were called by Apparao. I said in front of him, "Sir, I had a request to you. We 15 people are here, heads and supervisors you are. Kindly will visit Velivada. You come with us. We must visit Velivada. They lack confidence on the university. We must, ensure that confidence."
I always was rushing, desperate to start a life. All the while, some people, for them, life itself is a curse. People may dub me as a coward and selfish or stupid once I'm gone. I'm not bothered about what I'm called. I don't believe in after-death stories, ghosts, or spirits. If there is anything at all I believe that I can travel to the stars and know about the other worlds.
Yeah, he's sinking from the first day. See, tell me what happens in such cases. The first 24 hours are not very significant. Second 48 hours, things stabilize. The third 24 hours is bad. The fourth 24 hours can be dangerous. Now we are in the fourth 24 hours. So we have to keep a very close watch. We are cautioning him, but the boy is bent upon expressing his desire to stay with the cause.
The case booked under SCST Atrocities Act and Amendment of Suicide was booked on 18th, following Rohith's death on 17th. Why are they still arrested? Is it because they are BJP? Every citizen of this country is not allowed to step out of their state when they are booked on any non-bailable case. He is scot-free, moved to another country and is comfortably doing his research project.
अंधेरे समय में भी गीत गाए जाएंगे? जब दुख की परिस्थिति है, जब निराशा की परिस्थिति है, तब सबसे पहला कर्तव्य है कि कलाकारों ने पहले आंसू पोंछ देना चाहिए और मैदान में आना चाहिए। तो रोहित को सलाम करने के लिए हम लोगों ने भी एक मराठी में गीत लिखा। शिक्षणाच्या दारात विद्येच्या घरात पोचली बामणशाही, शिक्षणाच्या दारात विद्येच्या घरात पोचली बामणशाही, रोहित गेला दलित मेला मरते ही लोकशाही, मरते ही लोकशाही, मरते ही लोकशाही, मरते ही लोकशाही, नाही शिकायचं तुम्ही नागायचं मनुस्मृतीनं घातली बंदी, मनुस्मृतीनं घातली बंदी, मनुस्मृतीनं घातली बंदी, वेद ऐकिले तर मंत्र वाचिले तर शिसवतले काना मंदी, शिसवतले काना मंदी, शिसवतले काना मंदी, ही पिढ्यानं पिढ्याची मक्तेदारी विद्येची ठोकशाही, रोहित गेला दलित मेला मरते ही लोकशाही, मरते ही लोकशाही, मरते ही लोकशाही, मरते ही लोकशाही.
Let's just take a moment to breathe and process what we just saw on screen. It's extremely powerful, and many of us, including myself, haven't seen this documentary, and it's truly something else to witness the immediate aftermath of Rohit's passing. Unfortunately, we had to cut it short because there is a whole programming that we have planned for you, but we do hope that we're able to screen this documentary soon in full. We will keep you posted. What you saw in the documentary, many of Rohit's friends and comrades and people who were suspended alongside him were impacted by his life, but also experiencing the institutional discrimination. I think that leaves no doubt that what happened to him was institutional murder. There are so many of the folks that we've seen here that who couldn't be here with us today because many of them are in India and we're in New York. But this event, of course, would be incomplete without their voices. That is why we have collected their words, tributes, reflections in a zine designed beautifully by Ruafsa, who also couldn't make it today, and featuring art by Dalit artist Bekri Prasad, who was featured along with so many other Dalit artists in our exhibit. And now we invite our guest, former state rep and candidate for New York State Comptroller Raj Goyal, to help us unveil the theme. As a state rep, advocate, and entrepreneur, Raj has spent his entire life taking on entrenched systems and winning. He represented immigrants at the ACLU, founded Phone Free New York, which is the cell phone ban in all public schools that we know of, and has been a progressive champion his entire life. Raj is eager to be the first South Asian comptroller, and he plans to shape the comptroller fund by investing in New Yorkers over foreign governments in Wall Street. Raj.
I have to give that back, I'm so sorry. Good evening, everyone. It's my dear honor and blessing to be here tonight. And please, if we could, a round of applause for the great Yashica Dutt. What an incredible energy and spirit, and I'm so glad to be here. 10 years ago, the world lost a brilliant mind in Rohith. He famously wrote that his birth was not a fatal accident, but we are here tonight to say that his life was a revolutionary act, as we saw in this film. He wanted to be a man of the stars, not a soul reduced to his immediate identity. Today we stand in a New York that is finally beginning to see the true diversity of the South Asian experience. But we cannot celebrate South Asian experience, prominence, and success without acknowledging that caste discrimination remains a shadow. It casts a pall in our workplaces, our campuses, and our halls of power. We are at a pivotal moment. We just inaugurated our first South Asian American mayor. Yes, let's go ahead. And that's a victory for every New Yorker, every American who believes that government belongs to the people and not the donor class. I'm proud to stand as an ally to leaders like Zohar Mamdani and his affordability agenda, because in this state, the cost of living is a justice issue. But I should also remind you that power does not just sit in City Hall. It also sits in the $300 billion New York State Pension Fund, which is why I'm running for state comptroller. A little bit about me. I'm a husband, a son, a father. My wife, Monica, and I moved permanently to New York 15 years ago with a newborn. Today, our daughters are teenagers, so you can pray for me now. My 16-year-old is at Hunter High School. My 13-year-old is at Friends Seminary. And the defining part of our life is a joint family. I think many of you would resonate in the room with that. My parents, Indian immigrants who served as doctors in working class communities, they live right on my block. And my in-laws, public school teachers and union members for 30 years, are right there too. For those of you old enough to remember the show, we call this Everybody Loves Raymond Indian Masala style. So it is, of course, a blessing to have your parents with you. It is sometimes a little challenging for my wife to have her mother-in-law in the apartment every day. But just like back home in India, we manage. And so living in that multi-generational home, it clarifies the stakes. When I look at my parents, I see a struggle with aging in a city that's become too expensive. And when I look at my daughters, I see a generation facing a future threatened by climate change, data privacy theft. And then my family taught me every day, just like we saw in this powerful film, that service isn't a hobby, it's a duty. For me, that means I ended up in South Africa, working for Archbishop Tutu, fighting apartheid after apartheid fell in South Africa. It means, as Yashica mentioned, working at the ACLU on discriminatory issues. And of course, it means making sure that we live our values in public life. I helped run a family foundation here in New York. Some of you may know the Rubin Museum of Art, I'm sure. Sadly closed its doors, but now is a strong, vibrant virtual museum. And the Rubin family that I advised invested in over 75 documentaries. In fact, in one chapter of my career, I ended up being the executive producer of a film that won the Audience Award at Sundance, which was almost accidental. It was about music therapy for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. And one thing I realized, and that is so powerful about this work and the work that many of you do in this room and that Yashica does, is that art speaks to our soul, it stirs our conscience, but ultimately it must translate into action. Art sitting on the shelf is beautiful and should be marveled and should be supported. But what really transcends is when we move art and storytelling into action. And that is why I myself am committed to speaking truth to power and moving from ideas into the political theater. So for example, when you think about something as relatively, let's just admit it, boring as the state comptroller, as a state pension fund, think about this. The state pension fund currently has invested over almost $500 million in Palantir, which powers the ICE deportation scheme. And our current incumbent doubled that investment over the last year because that's how public policy affects our daily lives. My mother is 83 years old, now sadly a widow, delivered 5,000 babies, has been a citizen for 45 years, been in this country 55 years. And she asked me last year whether she could be deported and denaturalized because of this unbelievable war we have ripping apart communities and of course engaging in blatant un-American lawlessness. So that brings me back to Rohith, and as I close, the fight for caste legislation here in New York. I think it's 2026, it's time to stop pretending that it doesn't exist here. And as comptroller, I will use my audit power to ensure that state contractors, public universities, and state dollars are held accountable. We cannot have a New York for all if we allow an ancient hierarchy to dictate who gets a job or a home. Rohith reminded us we are all made of stardust, but our feet are planted in the struggle for material justice. We just shouldn't manage the books. We should use the power of the purse to protect our families and dismantle inequity. So we are building a coalition for justice, equity, and co-governance. I'm so grateful to be here tonight. I thank you for listening, and I thank you for all of us together as we stand at a dawn of a new era in New York, and hopefully in America, as we take on this pernicious threat and make sure that we build power together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that speech. For the next act, we are excited to have with us Malik Raj Trimali. Many of you know. He's a playwright, director, researcher, and a Dalit artist activist from India. He's a third-year student, PhD student at Northwestern, where he is a co-founder and president of the Ambedkar Du Bois Society. He has founded the Whistleblower Theatre Group, where he has written, directed, and performed anti-caste, anti-Brahminical patriarchy plays. Malik Raj is here with us today, all the way from Chicago, to perform his piece on Rohith.
Jai Bhim. Jai Bhim. Jai Bhim. Yeah. After 3 days of Rohith's institutional murder, my company, Whistleblower Theatre Group, has decided to perform his last letter, and we started performing that letter in different university campuses, spaces, and public spaces. It was 5-minute performance where different actors just read Rohith's last letter, and then there's a lot of people in Gujarat started questions that who is Rohith, and from there what is caste, and whenever you talk about caste it comes to the reservation is hona chahiye nahi hona chahiye, no? So that whole discussions is started after this performance. So that performance was earlier, it was 5 minutes, and as we know, even we saw the letter in the film as well, and all national TV has also telecasted his letter, and when we were performing this letter, audience members have reacted. Rohith was coward. Living a life is a resistance, and dying is cowardice. So we were and whatever happens with you, you have to live your life, and you can't just escape. So that literally we were performing, and we do not have answers how to justify or what should we say after this. So we have started thinking about Rohith more, and we found out his Facebook page, Facebook post, and so we were digging up who was Rohith, and media was presenting is one Dalit student got institutionally murdered and pressurized, and he is no more with us. So other than that, who was Rohith? And his Facebook posts are speaking up that actually how Rohith was not just a Dalit student or not just a student of a university, but he's a radical Ambedkarite, political student figure, and see, we all are here just because of Rohith. So we found like many interesting Facebook posts and posts on beef eating and like cow politics, and also the post on he was at the same time he was also talking about Carl Sagan. He was writing about Asaram Bapu of Gujarat, how like different like religious leaders were also like exploiting children and women. And he was also writing about how like everyday life philosophy he was getting like learned from his mother, and how, and yeah, interestingly he was also talking about that the sewing machine can be a tool for revolution. And so like different posts about space and like caste and atrocities, he always like reflected whatever is happening with it in his like time, and he was constantly reflecting on it. So after that we have like decided to make a long play, and it was like 1 hour solo show on Rohit's, based on Rohit's writings, and we call it मैं घास हूँ. I am a grass. I am the grass. So मैं घास हूँ is a poem by poet Avtar Singh Sandhu Pash, and मैं घास हूँ. This poem is like talks a lot about how I'm not. I'm just a grass, but I can like grew up anywhere, and there is no need to have like proper fertilizer. I can grow anywhere. So I will like going to read his letter and मैं घास हूँ poem. Good morning. I would not be around when you read this letter. Don't get angry on me. Angry on me. I know some of you truly cared for me. Cared for me. Loved me. Loved me. And treated me very well. Well. I have no complaints on anyone. It was always with myself I had problems. I feel a growing gap between my soul and my body, my soul and my body. And I have become a monster. I always wanted to be a writer, a writer, a writer, a writer of science, like Carl Sagan. At last, this is the only letter I am getting to write. I love science, stars, nature. But then I love people without knowing that people have long since divorced from nature. Our feelings are second-handed. Our love is constructed. Our beliefs colored. Our originality valid through artificial art. It has become truly difficult to love without getting hurt. The value of a man was reduced to his immediate identity and nearest possibility. To a vote, to a number, to a thing, never was a man treated as a mine. As a glorious things made up of stardust. In a very field, in studies, in streets, in politics, and in dying and living, I'm writing this kind of letter for the first time. My first time of a final letter. Forgive me if I fail to make sense. Maybe I was wrong, all the while in understanding world, in understanding love, pain, life, death. There was no urgency, but I always was rushing. I was rushing, desperate to start a life. All the while some people, for them, life itself is a curse. My birth is my fatal accident. I can never recover from my childhood loneliness. The unappreciated child from my past. I'm not hurt at this moment. I'm not sad. I'm just empty. I'm concerned about myself. That's pathetic. And that's why I'm doing this. People may dub me as coward and selfish or stupid. Once I'm gone. I'm not bothered about what I'm called. I don't believe in after death stories, ghosts or spirits. If there is anything at all I believe that I can travel to the stars and know about the other worlds. Stars, the other worlds. Stars and the other worlds. If you who is reading this letter can do anything for me, I have to get 7 months of my fellowship, 1,75,000 rupees. Please see to it that my family is paid that. I have to give some 40,000 to Ramji. He never asked them back, but please pay that to him from that. Let my funeral be silent and smooth. Behave like I just appeared and gone. Do not shed tears for me. Do not shed tears for me. Know that I'm happy dead man being alive. From shadows to the stars. Umana, sorry for using your room for this thing. To ASA family, sorry for disappointing all of you. You love me and very much. I wish all the very best for the future. For one last time. Jai Bhim. I forgot to write the formalities. No one is responsible for this act of killing myself. No one has investigated me, whether by their acts or by their words to this act. This is my decision, and I am the only one responsible for this. Jai Bhim. मैं घास हूं, मैं आपके हर किए धरे पर उग आऊंगा। मैं घास हूं और मैं आपके हर किए धरे पर उग आऊंगा। बम फेंक दो चाहे विश्वविद्यालय पर, बना दो हॉस्टल को मलबों के ढेर सुहागा फिरा दो भले ही हमारी झोपड़ियों पर, मेरा क्या करोगे? मैं तो घास हूं, हर चीज पर उग जाऊंगा। बंगे को ढेर कर दो, संगरूर मिटा डालो, धूल में मिला दो लुधियाना जिला, मेरी हरियाली अपना काम करेगी। 2 साल 10 साल बाद सवारियां फिर किसी कंडक्टर से पूछेगी कि ये कौन सी जगह है, मुझे न्यूयॉर्क उतार देना जहां हरे घास का जंगल है। मैं घास हूं, मैं आपके हर किए धरे पर उग जाऊंगा। मैं आपके हर किए धरे पर उग जाऊंगा। मैं घास हूं। जय हिंद। थैंक यू।
Thank you for that powerful performance, Marvin. For those among us who don't understand Hindi, he was talking about being grass that grows no matter what. 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And it's a really beautiful metaphor for Dalit resistance. So thank you for presenting that. Rohith's loss, as we know, has had a global impact. But no one has felt it more deeply than his own mother, Yashica Dutt. Since 2016, she has been crusading to make campuses safer for Dalit and caste-oppressed students. And his friend and colleague Danta Prashant, who was suspended alongside Rohith and has been systemically punished for his support and advocacy ever since. What we have here is an exclusive video tribute which Radhika Auntie shot for us despite her ailing health. And we are so grateful for her voice and her message.
నమో బుద్ధాయ జై భీమ్. జనవరి 30వ తారీఖు రోహిత్ వేముల బర్త్డే, 37th బర్త్డే. బాబు గారితో ఉంటే హ్యాపీగా బర్త్డే చేసుకున్నాము. బాధాకరం బాబు లేకుండా పోవడం, రోహిత్ వేముల లేకుండా ఉండడం. స్టూడెంట్స్కి నేను చెప్పాలనుకున్న మెసేజ్, మనకి మనం పోరాడి ఏదైనా సాధించుకుందాము, తప్పకుండా విజయం సాధిస్తాము మనం. కానీ అందరూ సమన్వయం పాటించండి. తొందరపాటుగా ఎవరు ఏ పనులు చేసుకోవద్దు, ఏ అఘాయిత్యాలు చేసుకోవద్దు. మీకోసం నేను పోరాడుతున్నాను, నా కోసం మీరున్నారు, నాలాగా పోరాడే వాళ్ళు చాలా మంది ఉన్నారు. మీరు అధైర్యపడవద్దు, మనం పోరాడి సాధించుకుందాము. రోహిత్ వేముల చట్టం త్వరలోనే వస్తుంది కాబట్టి చట్టం గురించి కూడా నేను ఇంకా వివరం చెబుతాను. నేను అన్ని యూనివర్సిటీలకి నా హెల్త్ బాగుంటే నేను వచ్చేసి నేను అందరికీ నేను తెలియచేస్తాను. మన చట్టంలో ఏమేమి ఉన్నాయి, ఏమేమి చేసుకోవచ్చు అని నేను తెలియచేస్తాను. ఎవరు అధైర్యపడవద్దు, అందరు సమన్వయం పాటించండి, తెలివితేటలతో ఉండండి. నేను చెప్పే మెసేజ్ ప్రతిసారి అదే, అందరు జాగ్రత్తగా ఉండండి, నన్ను గుర్తు చేసుకోండి. రోహిత్ వేముల ఎప్పుడు మీరు గుర్తే ఉంటారు. తల్లిగా నేను ఎంత బాధపడుతున్నానో నన్ను గుర్తు చేసుకోండి. అట్లానే మీ అమ్మాయిని కూడా మీరు గుర్తుంచుకొని ఎవరిని ఏ బాధ పెట్టద్దు. మీరు పెద్ద చదువులు చదువుకోవడానికి ఎన్నో ఆశలతో ఎన్నో కళ్ళ కానీ మిమ్మల్ని యూనివర్సిటీకి పంపిస్తున్నాము. మీరు జాగ్రత్తగా చదువుకొని బయటకు వచ్చేస్తారని నా మనవి. కర్ణాటకలో కూడా చట్టం ఏర్పడే ముందు కూడా పెద్ద మీటింగ్ పెట్టారు. ఆ మీటింగ్ కూడా మేము అటెండ్ అయ్యాము. తర్వాత కొంచెం నాకు హెల్త్ బాగోలేదు, హెల్త్ బాగోవడం వలన నేను ఎక్కడికి వెళ్ళలేకపోయాను. మొన్న రోహిత్ జనవరి 17వ తారీఖున యూనివర్సిటీకి వెళ్ళాల్సి వచ్చింది. వెళ్ళాను. అక్కడ అంటే ఎక్కువ సౌండ్ అయినా నన్ను దగ్గర పెట్టుకొని వాళ్ళు చేయలేకపోయారు, ఎందుకంటే ఆయన హెల్త్ బాగోలేదు కాబట్టి. నేను రోహిత్ డెత్ యానివర్సరీకి 17వ తారీఖు జనవరి 17న యూనివర్సిటీకి, హైదరాబాద్ యూనివర్సిటీకి వెళ్ళాను. మాట్లాడాను. అక్కడ డిప్యూటీ సీఎం కలిసేసి ఈ పిల్లల మీద ఉన్న కేసులన్నీ తీసేసేయాలని ఒక లెటర్ రాసి ఇచ్చాను నేను సీఎంకి. నాతో పాటు కొంతమంది స్టూడెంట్స్ వచ్చారు, ప్రొఫెసర్స్ కూడా వచ్చారు. మేమందరం కలిసేసి దాదాపు 45 minutes డిప్యూటీ సీఎంతో మాట్లాడాము. ఆయన సానుకూలంగా అనుకూలంగా ఉన్నాడు. మాతో చాలాసేపు మాట్లాడాడు. తప్పకుండా చేసి పెడతానమ్మా అని అన్నారు. అది కాకుండా నేను రోహిత్ వేముల చట్టం కూడా కర్ణాటకలో తీసుకుని వస్తున్నాడు, ఇక్కడ కూడా తీసుకురావాలనేసి కూడా నేను ప్రపోజల్ పెట్టాను. అందుకు డిప్యూటీ సీఎం ఆలోచిస్తామమ్మా ఓకే అని చెప్పారు. చాలా చాలా సంతోషంగా ఉంది. ఆ తర్వాత యూనివర్సిటీకి నేను అన్ని చోట్ల తిరిగాను, కానీ పిల్లల్లో చాలా మార్పులు, చాలా అంటే పట్టుదల కూడా ఏర్పడింది పిల్లల్లో. అంటే నేను అంతకుముందు నేను వెళ్ళిందని కాదు, ఇప్పుడు ఈ 10 yearsలో మాత్రం పిల్లల్లో చాలా పట్టుదల వచ్చింది. వాళ్ళ హక్కులు ఏంటో వాళ్ళు తెలుసుకుంటున్నారు, పోరాడుతున్నారు. పిల్లల్లో చాలా మార్పు వచ్చింది స్టూడెంట్స్లో. కానీ చట్టంలో మాత్రం ఇంతవరకు ఏం తేలేదు. పిల్లలు యూనివర్సిటీల్లో జరిగేవన్నీ పిల్లలు చనిపోయేదంతా చనిపోతూనే ఉన్నారు. ఇంకా పోరాడుతున్నారు, మిగతా పిల్లలు పోరాడుతూ ఉన్నారు. స్టూడెంట్స్లో మార్పు అది. చట్టం కాడికి వచ్చారంటే ఇంతవరకు న్యాయం జరగలేదు. వాళ్ళకి అనుకూలంగా అంటే ప్రభుత్వం బీజేపీ ప్రభుత్వం కాబట్టి వాళ్ళకి అనుకూలంగానే మలుచుకుంటున్నారు. బాగా హెరాస్ చేస్తున్నారు యూనివర్సిటీలో పిల్లల్ని. నేను ఈ లాస్ట్ 10 yearsలో నేను కేరళ వెళ్ళాను, గుజరాత్ పూనా వెళ్ళాను, ఢిల్లీ వెళ్ళాను, కర్ణాటక వెళ్ళాను. ఎప్పుడు తెలంగాణ వెళ్తూనే ఉంటాను. ఆల్ ఓవర్ ఇండియాలో చాలా ప్లేసెస్ తిరిగాను. కానీ నేను చూసింది ఏంటంటే పిల్లలు ఎక్కడికి వెళ్ళినా కూడా పిల్లలు సఫర్ అవుతూనే ఉన్నారు. కొన్ని యూనివర్సిటీలు మాత్రమే పిల్లలు బయటకు వస్తున్నారు, కానీ కొన్ని యూనివర్సిటీలు బయటకు రావట్లేదు. నేను వెళ్ళినప్పుడు నాకు చెప్పుకొని బాధపడుతున్నారు పిల్లలు. అమ్మ ఈ యూనివర్సిటీలో ఏం జరగలేదని కాదు, ఇక్కడ కూడా జరుగుతున్నాయి అని చదువుతున్నారు. పిల్లలు చనిపోతూ ఉన్నారు. చనిపోవడం మాత్రం ఆపలేకపోతున్నాము. చనిపోయేటట్టు ఆర్ఎస్ఎస్ బీజేపీ ప్రభుత్వం అట్లా హెరాస్ చేస్తుంది పిల్లలు. కాకుండా వాళ్ళు చనిపోయేటట్టు చేస్తుంది. కానీ పిల్లల్లో బాగా మార్పు వచ్చింది, అవగాహన పెంచుకున్నారు, పోరాట దిశను పెంచుకున్నారు. పిల్లలు పోరాడుతున్నారు హక్కుల కోసం. అసలు ఎందుకు వస్తుంది ఆ ఫీలింగ్? రోహిత్ వేముల గుర్తు చేసుకోవాలి. రోహిత్ వేములని, పాయల్ తాండ్వాని, అంబేద్కర్ గారిని వీళ్ళందరూ గుర్తు చేసుకుంటే ఎందుకు ఉద్యమం వదిలేసేయాలి? పోరాటాలు ఎందుకు వదిలేసేయాలి? వీళ్ళందరూ పోరాడి మన కోసమే కదా పోరాడింది, మన సమాజం కోసమేగా పోరాడింది, దళిత సమాజం కోసమేగా పోరాడి ఇమడలేక చనిపోయారు. పాయల్ తాండ్వాని చంపేశారు, చనిపోయింది. నజీబ్ని చంపేశారు. అసలు గల్లంతా చేసేశారు. ప్రభుత్వం అప్పటి నుంచి ఇప్పుడు దాకా ఉంది కదా, ప్రభుత్వం ఎందుకని కనుక్కోలేకపోయింది? అదే ఆర్ఎస్ఎస్ బీజేపీ వారు ఇంకొక అప్పర్ క్యాస్ట్ పిల్లడు అయితే వెంటనే కనుక్కుంటుందా? ఆ పిల్లడు ఎక్కడికి వెళ్ళాడు, ఏమైంది, ఎవరు ఇది చేశారని? ఆ పిల్లడు ముస్లిం పిల్లడు కాబట్టి కనుక్కోలేకపోయాడు. అసలు పట్టణ వేసి బీజేపీ ప్రభుత్వం ఆగిపోయింది.
Discrimination spoken about in campus spaces, and how has it changed today?
Before Rohith Vemula, how caste existed in campus spaces and how it is transformed. I'll not go deep into the history, but education, when it was treated as monopoly of certain castes, when this got opened up on account of constitutional alternatives that posed a challenge to the hegemony of these certain castes, it also created a certain sort of rupture at the very entry into the space of education. And thereby, this rupture in the way of institutional structures itself has reproduced certain forms of discrimination against those who enter into the educational spaces that were otherwise treated as privileged for certain castes. Thus, right from the start of one's admission to one ends their course to the kind of pathways that emerges, there are countless accounts of discriminations that one undergoes. Certain forms of it are explicit, overt, visibly seen. Certain forms are implicit, where that particular bias affects one more deeply. Now, when one looks at institutional murders or suicides, they are an extreme forms of expression of these different forms of alienation stemming into the ultimate step of it, right? The mark of even a single suicide in an educational institution should send cautions of these extremely perverse forms of discriminations existing. Unfortunately, in Indian university space, there are countless institutional murders have happened. Yet universities have failed to acknowledge the existence of these perverse forms of discrimination. To be specific to your question, in University of Hyderabad, the suicides happening in the form of Senthil, Madari Venkatesh, Ulyala Raju, Rohith, and many more. What had happened was, unlike many other institutional spaces where suicides happens and there are attempts to bury them up, here, on account of an active organizing space that existed in the form of students and faculty, there are questions asked as to why this is happening. There are official documents, official committees formed on account of movements, and they report on what went into the cause of these institutional murders. Now, that's where before Rohith Vemula, one could see existence of fact-finding committee reports. Now, after Rohith Vemula, did anything change much? It did, in terms of the creation of awareness of this, because whatever Rohith had written, it had shaken everyone. But that expression of the value of a man being reduced to his immediate identity, that itself touches many more whose daily way of life is reduced to immediate identity. That's why many got moved to that particular form of expression that Rohith had used as his final words. Now, that did create a form of churning, but what happened in the institutional landscape becomes more important. Have institutions transformed themselves into transforming the space of higher education into equitable space or not is a question that is yet to be answered, right?
But why do you think that when you said this letter creates a churning, you use the word, what is it that captured the imagination of millions? Because this letter has been translated into many languages. Many people refer to that as the single most important component of the Rohith Vemula movement. What is it about, Rohith's death, that letter, the whole episode, which started resonating with millions?
Well, in the form of resonation with millions, Rohith was fighting against perverse forms of discrimination. He was also standing up for himself. He was standing up for community. He was reading, writing, engaging, right? But beyond a point, when the bottlenecks become so deep that no matter how many times you bang your head, the wall of caste is unshaken, right? In that, now it has culminated into that, but then the way in which he expressed, there's no enmity towards anyone else, right? It is an expression of what society has offered to not just to Rohith. It is an expression of what society has offered to many millions in the form of reducing them to identity, no matter what you perform, what you do in your life, how much you achieve. children of an agricultural laborer families, if they have achieved a position in the society through their sheer hard work, as compared with someone who comes with many ranks of privilege, the non-acknowledgement of this amount of hard work, this amount of coming out of alienation, right, in itself creates layers of, layers of both privilege and underprivilegedness, or you can see, and the layers of oppression. So, this is where, when Rohith has written this, it has touched many. Many have chosen not to speak or not to reveal their identity, in the form that the moment their identities are revealed, there will be some kind of caricature of their self, along with the customary sanctions that that particularly speak about that particular identity. Now, thus, many chose not to reveal their identity. But when Rohit wrote about this very question of identity, many chose also not to hide their identity. In fact, I would say I was one amongst those who chose not to reveal my identity. But then it's on account of engagement with an anti-caste space that made me aware of what my identity is. It's not an identity to be shamed of. Rather, it's an identity that has been fighting for self-respect from years and years on, right? That's a battle for self-respect in which many have lost their lives. And it's not something that of someone willing to be serfs of someone, rather someone who was resisting. So that's very important in shaping one's own self. And this is where Rohit's letter also connects to those many layers in awakening that self-consciousness, right?
And it had an impact in India, it had an impact abroad. Let's start with India. Can you talk about what impact do you think it had on India? In your campus, your organization, and your supporters frame this this term, saying third wave. Rohith Vemula being the third wave at this time. So, in India, post Rohith, what kind of impact do you think was created from the Rohith Vemula movement?
In India post 2016, what had happened was because on Jan 17, 2016, much before that, there was a longer struggle that was happening against injustice that was that we all suffered, right? And that was very visible in front of everyone's eyes. That was very visibly seen in social media. The articulations are clear, documentary evidences were clear as to how this injustice has happened at University of Hyderabad, particularly of that time. Now, the moment one amongst us was institutionally murdered, now that has shaken many of those who were thinking about what is happening to students who have come from far away places and study, and when they stand up for their self-respect through their own means and methods of organizing, how they are sabotaged, right? How they are oppressed, or how there are various methods of regimenting their opinions, right? Now, when all of this was already there in the minds of many, right from Rohith holding Baba Saheb's portrait in his hand to us walking to Velivada, right? From that time itself, there is that memory. And after that, when one has read this letter, I think this letter has traveled. It speaks of both individual, it speaks of community, it speaks of universe, it speaks of stardust, it speaks beyond what one can imagine through these shackles that we have created, right? Through this regimentation, compartmentalization that we have created. I think that has evoked a sensibility amongst both those who are oppressed and some who want to be part of an equal society, right? There are these aspirations in both. So that's how I believe Rohith's letter also has had a wider resonance, both in India, across different campuses. If one looks at 2016, what prompted those many students to come face batons and lathi charge and become part of those protests? It is not orchestrated for sure, right? It was voluntary. It came out of individual consciousness journey. I think all of this has definitely led to that, at least when one looks at it in Indian context.
And globally?
Well, globally, again, I mean, English as a medium of expression, the way in which Rohith, when he writes that I wanted to be a writer of science, as Carl Sagan. Now, Carl Sagan as a figure, right? Someone is invoking that in their final writing. That as a writer, the last letter that that person is writing is about stardust. How that person wants to travel to stardust, right? And how that person is speaking against these compartmentalization of identities, right? This is a global discourse. We don't see alienation as an Indian phenomenon. Alienation exists anywhere that through the superstructures of caste, race, and right, and I mean alienation of one's own self from the subordination of those who might have lost battles long before, right? So now, thus, in the global lines also, this becomes very valid. The question of identity and the question of consciousness and the question of equal treatment, just treatment, right? So that's where globally also it has reached in that sense. And yeah, I mean, I think that one could speak it as a wave that resulted in that particular form.
Rohith Vemula was a brilliant guy. Somebody wanted to write like Carl Sagan. He was the integral part of the American Students Association in Hyderabad Central University, Telangana, leading the anti-caste movement, asserting for the rights of Dalits and tribals and Muslims and DNTs, and that were countering the RSS, BJP's Manuvadi agenda. On the other hand, BJP and RSS, the moment they come to power, their forces always feel that now it is the turn to unleash themselves on Dalits and minorities. So there was a constant conflict going on between the American Student Association and ABVP, and this was happening all across India, right? And when Rohith was compelled to commit suicide, we call it institutional murder because it is a system which has killed it. For quite some time, we have been observing in schools and in colleges, in university campuses in particularly, there is a lot of caste-based discrimination. It becomes really suffocating for the Dalits and tribal students like Darshan Solanki, Payal Tadvi, Rohith Vemula, and they are compelled to commit suicide. So Rohith was very inspiring to me also. Just before the Pune happened, Rohith had to commit suicide. Rather, he got killed. And I still remember we were holding a small protest in Ahmedabad and we were reading the letter of Rohith Vemula, and it was so inspiring. It must have brought tears in my eyes many times. And today, it's been 10 years and still justice is denied. So I hope that Rohith's case is reopened by the Telangana police. I hope the case is investigated by the officers whose integrity is impeccable, who are non-corrupt, who have some spine, who will not listen to Congress, BJP, who really believe in the constitution, and take the probe to its logical end, and that way justice is done. Frivolous cases were filed against Rohith and his team by the ABVP, as far as I understand, and filing a false and frivolous case against SC/ST by non-SC/ST itself is an offence under the Atrocity Act. So hopefully Telangana government will take cognizance of that, set up an SIT having good officers and take the probe to its logical end. Simultaneously, we all should come together, all the progressive, liberal-minded people, all the Ambedkarite groups, all the Dalit Sangatana, we all must come together and force all the state governments and even the union government to come up with the Rohith Vemula Act so that no Payal Tadvi, no Darshan Solanki, no Rohith has to sacrifice their lives like this.
Divya Malhari. Divya is a Columbia University graduate student whose work focuses on Dalit women in the southern part of India and examines the way their lives shape their language. Previously, she taught in India as an assistant professor of English, and she has been writing at dalitwriter.wordpress.com. Divya, take it away.
Thank you, Yashica. Good evening, everyone. I was invited here today to celebrate with all of you the life of Rohith Vemula, a short one of a rigorous academic whose life circumstances pushed him to fight to educate himself, to live, and ultimately end his life. I could sit here and tell you that his life affected me, but I would be lying. What affected me truly was his death. The loneliness that Rohit articulates has become my own, and I grow older. And as I grow older and switch countries to study in an Ivy League school, what I've come to realize is that Rohit's words pull down the curtain they held to a certain dark room called caste. This is a room where every sound echoes, everything you step on is quicksand, and every time your hand is stretched out for support, all you receive is a slap from nobody in particular. All you're left feeling is a searing pain. Rohit forced us to see ourselves as already existing in this room. I remember the day. It was 2016, and as usual, I turned up to an MA English classroom taught by an upper caste professor. It was called Representations of India. The professor thought it would be very dramatic and effective to bring the news of a Dalit student who committed suicide to the classroom. What a powerful tool to really interrogate the question of India by fronting the Dalit student, while also shaming all students for not having read about it already. Intellectual shaming is an integral part of Savarna teaching strategy. Anyway, I had barely settled in my seat when I heard her ask us if we were reading the news, a strange question even then. Some people mumbled some answers, and my hand shot up to say, I read about Rohith Vemula. My voice was quivering. My professor nodded dismissively because my shaking voice made me sound very unsure. I was very unsure, not of what I had read, but what I was to make of what I had read. The professor asked us some more questions about it, and I was the only one that continued to answer. She was frustrated after 3 questions because I seemed unsure while giving all the right answers. The dramatic effect she had hoped for was failing, and I was the reason. She stopped asking us and just gave us the news herself. She asked us to think about the idea of the education room. And with all of you here today, I want to share how eventually it was indeed Rohith Vemula who guided me out of it. As a student in the city, I found myself lost and alone on multiple occasions. And every time this happens, I read Rohith's letter. His hopelessness had become my truth. So when a couple of months ago I was in a classroom and I overheard a professor mock me with 2 of their Indian upper caste students, I quietly read Rohith's letter. I dwelled on the part where he asked me to treat him as if he had just appeared and vanished, like a dream. I stayed with him there for a while. I wanted to ignore what had happened in the class, but I couldn't. I wanted to speak about it, but words failed me. I sat with it, asking myself what this even means. My mind played out the rhetoric that would shelter me from immediate danger. You're the first Dalit woman to exist in such a classroom. Of course, it is designed to hurt you, but you will soldier on. I took a pause. The thought that I was the first Dalit whatever to do anything terrifies me. I cannot be the first Dalit person to do anything because I must absolutely believe that another Dalit person did it before me. They probably did not make their identity known because that was how it was. My grandmother and my mother taught for a living, and while they never declared their Dalitness, everyone around them knew it. Here, I have the privilege of being able to say I'm Dalit and be recognized for a political newness that only helps me live my wounds. I am not just a dream. I am not just appearing and vanishing. I am real. And so were all the ones before me. There will be many after me, and while we're all our ancestors' dreams, we are very much real and are inhabiting the space alongside everyone else. I have since found a new determination to imagine that the community is here. I care for this community that shapes my identity, my experiences, and my life. It is my community's age old perseverance that has sheltered me from taking pride in newness and first of its kindness. I fully understand today that my initial hesitation in my class in 2016 was necessary for me to understand that this space of the classroom isn't my own. I will always doubt myself. I'll always feel unsure of what to say and probably say things meekly. But what's more important is that I will still say something. I will say something that will make another Dalit person in the room feel less alone. They may not tell anyone they're Dalit, but my voice isn't my personal triumph. It is a hard-fought community one. As a third-generation school-going Dalit woman, I may not hear the voice of a first-generation schoolgoer, but I'm aware of her presence in every room I enter. I don't think of myself as alone anymore. Today I enter rooms believing that Dalit women before me have entered those rooms and commanded them. I come from a people and their love for me has brought me here. I think of quiet courage that communities give. I entered this room today thinking of Christina Danuja, stellar Dalit feminist leader who never fails to remind me that I'm precious and never alone in this world. I think of Benson Nithipudi, whose brotherly love teaches me to navigate the city with strength and grit. I look at Shrujana, who is present here, and think of the way her love hugs me tight whenever I need it. I'm always thinking of Vijeta Kumar, who first became my community. This doesn't count for my 7 minutes. Okay. I look very pretty while I cry, but I'm going to cover myself. I no longer think of myself as the first Dalit woman sitting in whichever classroom it is in this world. I think of myself as held lovingly with fierce care by my community. This love from the community, I believe, was what finally forced me to go and confront the professor who mocked me with their students. I stood there and listened to their meek apology. I accommodated it, but before leaving the room, I asked them to think of caste in real terms. It didn't matter that we had read about caste for the entirety of that professor's course. The imaginary Dalit entering a classroom makes for a very different reality, and I asked them to think about it. The dream of being in the classroom was realized and shattered through Rohith Vemula. But it has helped to know that I'm not alone. I'm not the first. I won't be the last. But I'm going to make damn sure whoever comes in after me knows that I thrived in this space, much like I know Rohith would have. If someone had told him he was not alone, that there was a community that would hold him and care for him. Because he's our own. Because here he's not in the shadows. We're all stars together.
This was not intended. Thank you, Divya. That was really powerful. I think as Dalit women, we are often mocked and derided for our vulnerability. We are told we are too frail, not frail enough, not dressed in a certain way, don't represent a certain kind of ideal, and I really value and appreciate your voice and everything that you've said to me. Thank you. Because the show must go on, next up is Manohar Boda. They're a PhD student of anthropology at Rutgers University, New Brunswick. Their work focuses on the anthropology of state, city, caste, DNT communities, and marginality. He has a long association with anti-caste movement and currently coordinates the Global Anti-Caste Thought Graduate Working Group, supported by Global Asias at Rutgers. Manohar.
Thank you, Yashica. Can you hear me? I don't know if you have noticed, in the first documentary, I saw Muthu Krishnan, Rajni Krish, who also, unfortunately, he committed suicide just a few months after Rohith. He was a jail. We were friends too. Jai Bhim again. Thank you, Yashica, for this opportunity, for letting me speak. I come off as a very anxious person. Bear with me if I showcase my anxiety in front of you. But yeah, so it means a lot to see so many people gathering here today to remember Rohith and honor his legacy. For each of us, Rohith might hold a different meaning, shaped by where we come from and what we have lived through. For me, Rohith was not just a symbol, a name that we invoke. He was someone I knew. I had a chance to spend time with him between 2014 and 16. And what stayed with me was his sharp mind, more so his intellect, his clarity in speaking, which I don't think I ever managed something like that, and the calm seriousness he carried. He was a good listener and a thoughtful. He was a good listener and thoughtful, and someone who would go great lengths to fight for students, stipends, scholarships. These are things that I know for sure that he has done, and the necessary campus residency support deserved by students from marginalized communities. The fight against injustice and inequities was very personal to him. His commitment and rigor were always evident in his attitude and his conduct. I entered university back home in 2013 as a first generation college going student. I was curious, yes, but I was also confused, struggling, and constantly unsure if I belonged. I was trying to understand a world that felt deeply unequal and more often than not hostile. University life for me, for many of us, was about figuring out how to survive each day. I remember feeling out of place most of the time. I didn't speak the language, socially and culturally, that universities seemed to expect. I was carrying the weight of my background with me into classrooms that pretended caste didn't exist. What I needed then was not theory, I needed people. I needed support from those who knew what it meant to struggle in similar ways. I needed a sense of belonging. One person who deeply shaped my journey was my mentor, Dr. Trina Nukatoti, who himself led ASA when he was a student at the University of Hyderabad. Through him, I found myself spending time with Rohith Vemula and others. Some of the most important learnings of my life happened over the long conversations and shared meals and evenings of discussions I had with these people, not in the lecture halls of my alma mater. And the last memory that I have with Rohith was the day, a couple of days before his death, I was at University of Hyderabad. He took me with him, fed me at North Shopcom. That's the last time I met, and I never thought I would meet Rohith again. I never realized I would not meet him again. Often, HEIs or the higher education institutions in India end up being very alienating and deeply violent spaces, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically. Caste doesn't disappear at the university gate. It follows you into classrooms, hostels, and even evaluation systems. Every year, students from marginalized communities and their lives end their lives because they are pushed to the edge of everyday humiliation, institutional neglect, and caste-based harassment. These are not tragic exceptions. They are part of a pattern. Let me stress it. We urgently need a strong, enforceable policy against caste discrimination in higher education back in the country. We need Rohith Act to be implemented. And in spaces in the West with diasporic presence, we need caste as a protected category to safeguard against caste-based discrimination. Although I am no longer part of Indian education scene, it breaks my heart to keep hearing about students' deaths. The violence has not stopped, it has simply been normalized. Rohit's legacy can be honored, and in struggles for social justice and in human liberation, in solidarities that we forge, and in our refusal to forget. Remembering him is not only about grief, it is about responsibility. It is about demanding justice, dignity, and equality. And again. Let me pause, let me just stop by reciting a poem written by Kalekuri Prasad, comes from the very same land that Rohit comes from, and this is translated by Narendra Bedi de Kufirda. I was Shambhuka in the Treta Yuga. 22 years ago, my name was Kanchikacharla Koteshu. My place of birth is Kilvanmani, Karamchadu, Nirukonda. Now Chunduru is the name that cold-blooded feudal brutality has tattooed on my heart with flashes. From now on, Chunduru is not a noun but a pronoun. Now every heart is a Chunduru, a burning tumor. I am the wound of multitudes, the multitude of wounds for generations, an unfree individual in a free country, having been the target of humiliations, atrocities, rapes, and torture. I am someone raising his head for a fistful of self-respect. In this nation of caste-based bigots, blinded by wealth, I am someone who lives to register life itself as a protest. I am someone who dies repeatedly to live. Don't call me a victim. I am immortal. I am an immortal. I am an immortal. And that is what Rohit is. He is our stardust. He is our immortal. He'll stay with us and he'll live with us. Thank you.
Thank you for that powerful reflection, Manohar. It's really important that we discuss how caste actively plays out in campus situations, in classrooms, not only in India, where it of course does, but even in the US. Thank you for invoking that. Next we have Shipra Ukhe. Shipra is a prominent Dalit political scientist who led and organized a protest of 10,000 people to the RSS headquarters in Nagpur on January 30th, 2016, exactly 10 years ago. The protest was under the banner of Rohith Vemula Fights Back, and we'd love to hear from Shipra about what she has to say about it.
Good evening, everyone, and a very warm Jai Bhim to all in this room. And thank you, Yashica, for having me here. This day holds a profound weight for me. On this very day, 10 years ago, on January 30th, 2016, I was instrumental in turning the rally of 10,000 people to the gates of RSS headquarters in Nagpur. It was a historic moment. In the 91 years of that institution's existence, no one had dared to take a march to its doorstep. At that time, there were numerous rallies going on throughout the country for the same cause. But this protest was unique. While others were protesting the tragedy of the institutional murder, we had already identified its root and questioned it publicly. I and Shiv, he's sitting there, chose to confront the source directly rather than its byproduct. We were fueled by a singular urgent need, justice for Rohit, without having any idea that our defiance would backfire as a devastation. We did not know that when you challenge the source, the system responds by trying to erase the challenger. That the system would eventually hire the mighty government to destroy our lives in one stroke. But 10 years later, I'm not here simply to talk about the logistics of that rally. I'm here to talk about the battle for the mind that followed. To understand this, I want to invite your attention to two write-ups that are crucial to understanding Rohith, to standing with him, and yet to questioning the path he chose. The first text is Rohith's own words, a part, not the whole, and we repeatedly heard it today and for years. In that heartbreaking letter, Rohith revealed a beautiful cosmic ambition. He didn't want to be a number or a vote. He wanted to be a writer of the stars. A writer of science like Carl Sagan. He felt a growing gap between his soul and his body. His most haunting observation was that society reduced us to our immediate identity. We are treated as things, as categories, but never as minds. In his despair, he came to believe his very birth was a fatal accident. The second text, or the second write-up, is a part of a note written by the wife of Carl Sagan. When the news of Rohith's suicide reached her, she chose to pass the politics around and saw this entire story or an event or happening as a civilizational tragedy. And she wrote, to read his suicide note and to learn the details of his predicament is to get a vivid inkling of the actual cost of bias to our civilization. If we could somehow quantify the totality of lost contributions and innovations as a result of prejudice, I believe we would find it staggering. This is the qualitative truth we must face today. Bias is not just a social ill, it is a thief. It steals the innovations, the cures, the poems, and the scientific breakthroughs that a mind like Rohith's was meant to give to the world. When the system attacked me and my family, when they tried to destroy our lives and steal our intellectual work, they were trying, once again, to prove that our minds had no value. They wanted us to feel empty, just like Rohith. But today, I want to talk about why we must refuse that emptiness. We must bridge the gap between our souls and our bodies right here on this earth and demand that the world recognizes us not as accidents, but as the architects of the future. We have spent a decade mourning Rohith's fatal accident. But I stand here to tell that my survival and the survival of every Dalit scholar in this room is a calculated revolution. When the state moved against us, trying to erase our work and steal our research, they wanted me to accept the silence of the byproduct. They wanted me to believe that my mind was disposable. But I chose to look through the eyes of Andrean. I chose to believe that if the loss of our innovation is staggering to civilization, then the protection of that innovation must be the highest priority of the law of the land. My fight for approximately $15 million as a compensation is not just about a number. It is a refusal to let the state steal my future for free. It is a message to the source that we are no longer available for institutional murder. We have put a price on our dignity, and that price is too high for them to even afford again. To the young researchers here, do not look at Rohith's path as your only exit. Do not let them convince you that you are empty. You are the contributions and innovations that Andrean spoke of. Your data, your poems, your theories, and your lived experiences are intellectual properties. They are assets, and the Constitution is bound to protect it. And now it has become a protection under SCST Prevention of Atrocities Act. Let us honor Rohith not by following him into the stars, but by bridging the fire of the stars into our courtrooms and our classrooms. Let us demand that the world recognizes us, not as a tragedy to be pitied, but as a mind to be respected, compensated, and feared. Our birth is not an accident. It is the answer. Thank you so much.
Shipra, thank you so much for that powerful invocation. That is something we all need to remember. Our birth is the answer. We now welcome Prachi Patakar, a New York-based feminist and an anti-caste activist and organizer whose work links the local and the global, personal memory, and political struggle. Over to you, Prachi.
Thank you so much, Yashica. Jai Bhim, Jai Savitri. What a wonderful event. I think it should have been more full than it is. I know it's cold out, but you know. I'm here today because it's important to be anti-caste. It's important to work for annihilation of caste as somebody who doesn't only come from Dalit communities, but the responsibility of anti-caste activism and responsibility to annihilate caste must be of all people and people from all different castes, especially actually people who come from the dominant caste too. I'm humbled to be here today with all of you. Thank you so much for sharing. And I've written something, so I hope I'm going to share my reflections, not just as my personal stories, but more is what I'm thinking. 10 years ago, I remember gathering not too far from here at Union Square in a cold January morning, just like this, to honor Rohith, his life, and mourn his death. It was a small but determined group. We can't call it a sea because it was very small, but a sea of blue. We felt that within us, marched defiantly around Union Square. Rohith's activism, his writing, his unwavering desire to dream, his courage to fight, his love for both science and for nature, reminding us of humanity's forgotten connection to the natural world. And most importantly, his belief in the universal dignity of humanity were so powerful and inspiring to many of us. And for those of us in the US who had been raising issues that the caste system and casteism also has been brought here by the dominant caste people with their Brahminical ideology, and as they say it, with $10 in their pockets, nothing else. They like to say that. But they brought with them their multi-generational advantages and their Brahminical ideology. Rohith's life and what he believed in, he urged us to see each other not through just the artificial divisions of caste and race and gender and divisions used to control and exploit and plunder, but simply as stardust, seen so far from the universe as specks, and understand our role and the presence in this world as just that. And when you see the world that way and understanding us as mere stardust, you can actually imagine a world beyond the now, a world without caste. And it's only with that imagination the fighting to get there becomes possible. And Rohith showed us that. His life, not just his death, became a symbol. It brought into sharp focus that 2,000 years of dominance, violence, and the system of inherited caste-based reservations that actually exists for the upper castes, because of that, has solidified, I think somebody else called it today, a caste monopoly. This monopoly that systematically withholds power, wealth, and status from Dalits, Bahujans, and Adivasis. Rohith's struggle and his inspirations continue through the work of his mother, Yashica Vemula, and other anti-caste activists and advocates that have been pushing for the new UGC rules to address caste discrimination in higher education. And 10 years after his death, his activism and his courage and his dreams still resonate through the powerfully for the anti-caste movement here and in India. Yet, we have consistently seen, as decades ago after the Mandal Commission report, a decade ago in response to Rohith's death, and now, that the Dalit Bahujan people, when they stand up for their rights and demand accountability and reparations for thousands of years of historical injustice, and even when they give their lives for this collective demand, the response is what my mom, Gail Ombud, called a few years ago, twice-born riot against democracy. And when they riot, they accuse anti-caste movements of instigating caste wars and dividing the nation. And yet it is these twice-born people, the Hindu nationalists, particularly their Brahminical strategies, that have been effective at the national division. And we're literally seeing that right now. And yet it is actually the anti-caste and non-Brahmin movements that are the ones that offer a vision and a strategy that truly aims to unite all people. They demand us to dream about a future that is free for all of us, not just for themselves. Not just because what we know that is true, that the most historically oppressed, when they're free, all of us are free. But it is because these movements' dreams actually encompass a world which imagines everyone's freedom. What is undeniable is that whether through the violent Hindutva and Brahminical assault there or push for increase into the dominance in this country, in the US, this twice-born riot persists in this country also. It operates under the guise of Hindu victimhood, claims for reverse discrimination, and false assertions of Hinduphobia. Whenever Dalit and anti-caste movements assert their right to discriminate, not to be discriminated against, they shout Hinduphobia. In this context of anti-DEI movements in this country, this mindset and this twice-born riot aligns with the MAGA movement, making common cause with the twice-borns of this country, even as anti-Indian immigrant sentiment simultaneously increases. The impact, I'm going to skip ahead because I know we have to end, but I still have hope. Even in the last 10 years here in the US, since we walked in the cold streets of New York to mourn Rohith in Union Square, the anti-caste movement in this country has flourished. It has gotten stronger and has gotten leaderful. We see it in the faces in this audience We see it in the leadership and voices and labor of speakers and artists featured here and those that organized this event. We see it in the victories in Seattle and in California to win protections against caste discrimination. And we see it in the workers who are fighting for their right to work with dignity, fairness, and fighting the behemoth that is the Baptist Temple and its global institution. This is how we honor the life and memory of Rohith. We continue to fight for our anti-caste futures. We continue to stand in solidarity with all those fighting for immigrant rights in Minneapolis and nationally. And we stand with those who are against the twice-born rioters in South Asia, here, and everywhere, united as Stardust. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prachi, for making the transnational connections that are very important between the twice born here in every sense and the twice born back home. We now present Tejas Hurd, a PhD student at University of Pennsylvania, one of the few people who traveled from Philly to attend this event. We are very grateful. He's the founder and editor of the Satya Shodha, a digital publication focused on social issues and translation of texts from the anti-caste archive.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Yashica Dutt, Anti-Caste Collective, Ruabza, and other organizing members for putting together this great tribute to Rohith Vemula. Birthdays are usually a joyous occasion, and on Bhim Jayanti, April 14th, for example, there are celebrations in the honor of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar in India and across the globe. But on Rohith's birth anniversary today, it is hard not to feel a bit sad, primarily because his passing reminds us of the countless instances of harassment and discrimination that Dalit Bahujan students face on Indian campuses. But at the same time, Rohith also shows us the fighting spirit of those same students and the movements they have historically led. Ironically, as we gather here in New York today, upper castes in India are protesting against the government regulations meant to address casteism on campuses. These reactionary protests show that the fight that Rohith was fighting and that cost him his life is not over. When he was at the University of Hyderabad, Rohith lived and breathed politics, and after his death, he inspired a movement that engulfed the country and beyond. I did not know Rohith. I think I heard of his passing on Facebook. At that time, I was living in Mumbai and I worked at Economic and Political Weekly. And like many other millennials, I was very active on Facebook and Twitter. By 2016, I had connected with many other Ambedkarites on social media, and it was through these Ambedkarites that I learned of Rohith's passing and subsequently his activism. When the political establishment and mainstream news media was busy labeling Rohith as an anti-national and discussing his caste identity, it was the Ambedkarites on social media and through blogs and platforms like Dalit Camera and Roundtable India who challenged the upper caste narratives as well as broadened the terms of debate. They historicized the issue of casteism in higher education, student suicides, upper caste holdover power, and so on. I am very glad to see an art exhibition here today. Visual art was a big component of the Justice for Rohith movement as well. In popular imagination, there is a tendency to pit protests, marches, sit ins, and picketing against other quote unquote softer forms of activism, such as art and any form of digital activism. I personally feel this is an unproductive binary. Instead of putting street protests in opposition to digital activism, they can be thought of as complementary. They are also quite integrated into each other in our contemporary digitally mediated world. Can you think of any demonstration in 2016 without posters and some sort of social media publicity? Also, in the periods between moments of intense protest activity, it is digital and cultural forms of activism that keep a movement going. Rohit's own activism points to these assemblages of protest practices. He was active in uh, protest movements on the SU campus, but also wrote prolifically on Facebook. Further, after his death, the artifact that became the symbol of the movement was the letter he wrote in his last moment. When his comrades found this letter, they immediately photographed it and shared it online. In that sense, it was that later as a digital reproduction that circulated everywhere and that moved, inspired, and radicalized thousands. The later as a digital artifact is what made the words from shadows to stars immortal and inspired so many artworks. Rohit lamented that the value of a man was reduced to his immediate identity. Rohit espoused many causes. It is worth remembering that what got him and his comrades in the crosshairs of the political establishment was their speaking out against capital punishment and their direct challenge to Hindu nationalism. Rohit Vemula's politics was broad based, and his biography does not fit in a neat, bounded structures. Rather, it points to the interlocking, complex nature of reality as well as politics. Therefore, we should take care not to reduce him to his immediate identity. Jai Bhim.
Thank you so much, Tejas. That was beautifully said. I'm one of the millennials who, in 2016, saw Rohit's letter online, and really it moved me and changed my entire life. So thank you for mentioning that. The last speaker is me. A little bit odd to read my own bio, but here we go. Um, sure. Last speaker is Yashica Dutt.
Yashica. Yashica is a Dalit author of the award-winning Coming Out as Dalit, which was inspired in part by Rohith Vemula's last letter. She's also the festival director for From the Shadows to the Stars, celebrating 10 years of Rohith Vemula's life and joy. Could say so much more, but I'm going to give it to you.
I'm going to read a piece that I wrote, commissioned by Tejas here, when Tejas worked at the Quint in India. This was on Rohit's 7th anniversary of his passing. And I feel that this is one of the most significant pieces I've written. I'm going to read part of it because I'm the one who's responsible for the time running on this. So. Dearest Rohit, it's been 7 years. The stardust you poured from your words now blooms in the trenches of the new narratives of caste awareness. Your letter, ink scribbled on a sheet of lined paper, was molten lead that they threatened to drain into our ears when we heard a single word of their made-up language. It was lava that paved the streets, where a man was never a mind, reduced to their nearest identity and immediate possibility, gushing forth and soldiering into the crevices of caste that appraised how much we were worth. Those streets, Rohit, now echo with your name. Many still stubbornly stick their fingers into their ears to drown them, but our voices get louder and stronger. You said that you didn't believe in spirits. but you did believe that you could travel to the stars. You must have landed. How else does one explain the stir you left in your wake, make sense of the opening of a portal that had been guarded by governments, bureaucracies, and institutional might for decades? By one letter, words in a single file, disorderly and perfectly in tune. Your first time of a final letter, forged by a luminosity, was a clarion, a burning note of despair and heartbreak. It seared onto our brains, pierced through guts, and emblazoned across the collective memories of generations. For some, it was the first real evidence of caste that had held them by their jaw and compelled them to stare directly into the crushing disappointment that rises like smog from the being of a Dalit person lost to a brutal system. The first trace of exclusion, bias, inequality that they could not overlook with ease, even though they tried. Of course they tried. For others, it was a first of a different kind. The first instance of a mirror reading back feelings they had never the courage to locate in their own bodies. The first rhyme of rebellion in minds that were chained into submitting to the pursuit of an equality that might never be theirs. I was among the Dalits who were never the same since the first time they read your letter, Rohith. Your words made me part with a secret I had carried so close to my spirit. It had come to define me. Your script allowed me to wrestle away from the last hanging chain link of shame that kept me cuffed to proving myself as worthy over and over and failing anyway. Your writing made me free in every way that was possible. But Rohith, you must know, it wasn't your letter that created the surge of Dalit visibility that we see soaring higher by the day. It wasn't your letter that allowed me to come out as Dalit and own what was always mine. It was you. You said you lived your life in shadows, never giving up dreaming about stars, that you felt a growing gap between your soul and your body, that you wanted your funeral to be silent and smooth. You wanted us to react to your death as if you had just appeared and were gone. Forgive us, Rohith, but we could not do that. Even though those who held on to their caste so tightly wished we had, we could not see the gap that you felt between your soul and body was also felt inside of us. Not acknowledge that the anxiety that consumed you, making you desperate to start a life, had also threatened to overcome so many of us, lest that bare thread of opportunity be snatched, just as easily and swiftly it was from you. It was you, Rohith, the unappreciated child of your past, who shifted the axis of what it means to be born lower forever. Your words carried meaning because they carried the transcendent essence of you. You would have possibly shifted that axis even harder and more definitively had you not been snatched from us. Make no mistake, Rohith Vemula. Your words are lava, but you were the volcano. Thank you so much to our storytellers. As we get on with time, I would like to invite Manohar and folks who are going to join him on stage to lead us into song, because song and music are an indelible part of anti-caste culture. And this evening will not be complete without anti-caste music of resistance. So I invite Manohar, Maulik Raj, Prerna, Lekha, and others on stage to lead us into song. Many of us don't speak the same language, but please sing along if you can.
start with a song called. Join everybody who can sing, please join. We are starting with a song called Todudo Todudo. It's basically break caste, break jati, break annihilate. In a way, it also implies to do away with the caste system. हजारों सालों से गुलामी बेड़ियां जीत कर कहती है चाहिए तो हजारों सालों से गुलामी बेड़ियां जीत कर कहती है चाहिए तो तोड़ दो जाति की जंजीरें वक्त मांग रहा भरपूर वर्णों की सत्ता ने रौंदा है बिस्तर पे उठ जाओ ऐ नारी लगाओ जोर तोड़ जाति की जंजीरें वक्त मांग रहा भरपूर तोड़ जाति की जंजीरें वक्त मांग रहा भरपूर जाति में बाटा जुड़ न सकोगे यारो पुराने जनियों को मामूली से ही को पुराने जनियों को काट कर फेंक दो लगाओ तोड़ दो जाति की जंजीरें वक्त मांग रहा भरपूर जाति की जंजीरें वक्त मांग रहा भरपूर से जो भी मिल गए बहुत हुआ है प्यारे धर्मों के दर्शन भी उड़ के बिगड़ गए सारे भैया बिगड़ गए सारे जातियों से जो भी मिल गया बहुत हुआ है प्यारे धर्मों के दर्शन भी उड़ के बिगड़ गए सारे भैया बिगड़ गए सारे गहरी जड़े रोग है पुराना बहुत गहरी जड़े रोग है पुराना काटना शुरू लगाओ जाति की जंजीरें वक्त मांग रहा भरपूर तोड़ जाति की जंजीरें वक्त मांग रहा भरपूर यारो निर्दर्शन का सहारा दिलो दिमाग समाज से देखो जाति का पिटारा भैया जाति का पिटारा निर्दर्शन का सहारा दिलो दिमाग समाज से देखो जाति का पिटारा भैया जाति का पिटारा सामंतों से जाति के गुंडों से मेरे सामंतों से जाति के गुंडों से धर्मों के पंडों को लगाओ जाति की जंजीरें वक्त मांग रहा भरपूर वक्त मांग रहा भरपूर वक्त मांग रहा भरपूर
Now the song that we are about to sing might ruffle some feathers. We are also reclaiming our what Savarnas, the Brahminical system has always proclaimed as demons, Rakshasas. We are
we are reclaiming them. These demons, these are not demons, these are our ancestors, our leaders, our fighters. Jai Jai Veeruda Ravana Suruda. 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 Jai Jai Yoguda Manaraka 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 Suruda. Jai Jai Jambava Jai Jai Shambhuka. Jai Jai Jambava Jai Jai Shambhuka. Jai Jai Jambava Jai Jai Shambhuka. Jai Jai Shambhava Jai Jai Shambhuka. Jai Jai Eklavya Jai Jai Rahuketu. 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 Jai Jai Kartiki Jai Jai Surpanaka. Jai Jai Veeruda Ravana Suruda. Jai Jai Yoguda Manaraka Suruda. Jai Jai Veeruda Ravana Suruda. Jai Jai Yoguda Manaraka Suruda. And we are ending with Dalita Purulamma, the assertion of Dalit Panther-ness. Dalita Purulamma, కారం చెడుపు సాముల మీద కలబడి నిలబడి పోరు చేసిన దళిత పురులమ్మ. కారం చెడుపు సాముల మీద కలబడి నిలబడి పోరు చేసిన దళిత పురులమ్మ. కారం చెడులో కలదక పల్లె కల్లె పేరున మాదిగ పల్లె. కల్లె పేరున మాదిగ పల్లె. కల్లె పేరున మాదిగ పల్లె. నానా సాహెబ్ పోయి వలెలకు మాదిగ పల్లె తల్లి లాంటిది. మాదిగ పల్లె తల్లి లాంటిది. మాదిగ పల్లె తల్లి లాంటిది. కరుణ పోయిన శత్రువునైనా కరుణ చూసే పేదల పల్లె. కరుణ చూసే పేదల పల్లె. కరుణ చూసే పేదల పల్లె. మాదిగ పల్లె పేరు వెంకరా కమ్మదలే కాళ్ళు వణికెరా. కమ్మదలే కాళ్ళు వణికెరా. కమ్మదలే కాళ్ళు వణికెరా. ఐసలత్తి మరి పచ్చ మారితే హా ఊరి దళలకే ఉచ్చబడతది దళిత పురులమ్మ. కారం చెడులో సాముల మీద కలబడి నిలబడి పోరు చేసిన దళిత పురులమ్మ. కారం చెడుపు సాముల మీద కలబడి నిలబడి పోరు చేసిన దళిత పురులమ్మ. కోటి రాజుల మునిగి తేలిన ఆడిన మాటకు అడిగిటారు. ఆడిన మాటకు అడిగిటారు. వడ్డీల మీద వడ్డీలు కట్టి నడ్డి విరిగిన నీతి మంత్రులు. నడ్డి విరిగిన నీతి మంత్రులు. వడ్డీల మట్టై మట్టిలో మన్నై పండించిన ప్రతి పంట గింజలు. పండించిన ప్రతి పంట గింజలు. మస్తులు ఉండే కష్టజీవులు దళిత పురులమ్మ. కారం చెడుపు సాముల మీద కలబడి నిలబడి పోరు చేసిన దళిత పురులమ్మ. కారం చెడుపు సాముల మీద కలబడి నిలబడి పోరు చేసిన దళిత పురులమ్మ. అంబేద్కర్ జిందా జిందా హై. అంబేద్కర్ జిందా జిందా హై. పెరియార్ జిందా జిందా హై. పెరియార్ జిందా జిందా హై. సావిత్రి జిందా జిందా హై. సావిత్రి జిందా జిందా హై. ఫూలన జిందా జిందా హై. ఫూలన జిందా జిందా హై. పెరియార్ జిందా జిందా హై. ఫూలే జిందా జిందా హై. ఫూలే జిందా జిందా హై. సిద్ధూ జిందా జిందా హై. కన్హూ జిందా జిందా హై. బిర్సా జిందా జిందా హై. ఫతిమా జిందా జిందా హై. ఫతిమా జిందా జింदा है. तू भी जिंदा जिंदा है. तो मैं भी जिंदा जिंदा है. हम सब जिंदा जिंदा है. हम सब जिंदा जिंदा है. हम सब जिंदा जिंदा है. जय भीम.
Thank you so much for all of you for being here. This has been a terrific evening, gone better than I would have imagined. I just want to say food is political. Dalit food, which has been sidelined but also admonished and deemed offensive, carries even more political charge. That's why our food today, which we hope you're able to eat in 30 minutes because they'll kick us out, our food is from Trin City. It's an Indo-Caribbean joint in South Ozone Park. Manohar came from New Brunswick, New Jersey, went to South Ozone Park and brought the food here. So we really have him to thank for this. Yes, absolutely. Our food includes beef, because eating and storing beef has led to attacks on Dalits and Muslims in India, especially over the last several years. But before you enjoy the food, let me add, organizing an event of this scale, the likes of which that has been never seen before in New York, has been a dream come true. As we gather in community today, huddling from the brutal cold outside, and the overall climate of our country, we are reminded of Baba Sahib, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who came to New York nearly a century ago and probably dreamt of a day like today when so many Dalit, caste oppressed Adivasi people and allies have gathered to mark the legacy of a Dalit icon, Rohith Vemula. We are grateful to our partners at Ambedkar International Center, Ambedkar King Study Circle, Indian American Muslim Council, Sacred Chicago, Hindus for Human Rights,
Shri Guru Ravidas Sabha of New York,
and Indian Civil Rights Watch, without whose incredible generosity this event would not have been possible. We thank this space, the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Trans Community Center, for this beautiful space and support throughout. And lastly, I want to thank Rutgers Anti-Caste Collective for their wonderful support. Round of applause for that brave. Blue Ofsa, who tirelessly worked for the event and could not be here because they are back in India, even from across continents. My dearest friends and family, Eric and Jesus on sound and lights, Sean, Chris, who have watched me run around for weeks planning this, and who selflessly devoted their time, talent, and energy, which you saw, to make this event possible. I couldn't be more grateful for all of you and all of you. Thank you all for coming and spending Rohit's 37th birthday with us. Jai Bhim.